Welcome, everyone. This is Pivot Point, Strategy for Change. I'm Nick Michael, and today we're going to look at one of my favorite ideas, the power of the pivot. Now, when people hear pivot, they often think business jargon or startup buzzwords. But a pivot is really just this, a moment when the way you've been doing things stops working and you decide to change direction instead of doubling down on something that's no longer serving you. You've seen that in your own life. You've seen it in relationships. You've seen it in your work, your health, maybe even your finances. And some of the most successful companies and investors in the world, they've had to pivot just to survive. So in this episode, we're going to have some fun with their stories. Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Instagram, Slack, Warren Buffett, and more. And then translate those lessons back to you. Because the real question is, what can their pivots teach you about your next move? Let's get into it. First, when a business has to reinvent itself, let's start with companies you already know. You see them every day. You use their products. They feel like they've always been successful. But here's the twist. Almost none of them ended up where they started. They had to pivot. Some more than once. Let's talk about Netflix. From red envelopes to streaming giants. Does anyone remember those red envelopes that Netflix used to use? They'd show up at your door in your mailbox. If you're younger, you might have seen them only in movies. But that wasn't the entire Netflix business model. You go online, you pick a DVD, they mail it to you, you mail it back. Now imagine you're running that business, and it's working. People like it. And then you start to notice the world changing. Internet speeds are getting faster. More people are online. And you realize, wait a second, future isn't going to be in physical discs. It's going to be in streaming. That's a scary thought, right? Because if streaming takes off, your current business is eventually dead. Netflix had a choice. Protect the red envelope or pivot into streaming. They chose the pivot. First, they shifted from DVDs to online streaming. Then they made another pivot from simply streaming other people's content to creating their own, like shows like House of Cards and Stranger Things. That move turned them from a small mail-order DVD company into one of the most influential entertainment companies on the planet. The takeaway for you? Sometimes the future whispers before it shouts. If you wait until it's streaming, if you wait until it's screaming, you've waited too long. Pay attention to the early signs in your own life. Boredom, dread, frustration, that sense of, this can't be it. These are whispers that it might be time to pivot. Amazon. From bookstore to everything to the cloud. Amazon started as a simple online bookstore. That's it, just books. Then, over time, they expanded. Books became CDs, then electronics, and then everything. They became the everything store. But here's the interesting part most people don't think about. Amazon didn't stop there. Behind the scenes, they built an internal system to run their own website and data needs. A big, powerful server infrastructure. Then they realized maybe other companies need this too. So they pivoted again, launching Amazon Web Services, AWS, their cloud computing business. And now, a huge portion of Amazon's profits doesn't come from boxes and Prime deliveries. It comes from renting computing power to other companies. So they went from selling books to selling everything to selling the invisible backbone of the internet. The takeaway for you? Your biggest strength might be something you haven't discovered yet. Sometimes you only need to find it by doing something else. And being curious enough to notice where the real value is. Ask yourself, what do people keep coming back to me for that I almost take for granted? That might be your version of AWS. Next, Apple. From computers to pocket supercomputers. Apple was originally just a company that offered computers in boxes, on desks, screens, keyboards, beige or colorful machines. Then came the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. That alone was a pivot, moving from computers to digital music. The real pivot? The iPhone. The iPhone wasn't just a phone. It was a computer, an internet browser, a camera, a music player, all in your hand. Then Apple added the App Store, inviting other people to build on top of their device. Suddenly, Apple wasn't just about technology, it became about identity, lifestyle, design, and experience. The takeaway for you? Sometimes a pivot isn't just changing what you do, it's changing how you see yourself. From I'm someone who works out sometimes to I'm an athlete in training. From I'm bad with money to I'm someone learning how to manage money well. A shift in identity often powers the behaviors that follow. Instagram. The power of simplifying Instagram started out as an app called Bourbon. It tried to do everything: check-ins, gaming elements, messaging, photos, all in one. And guess what? People weren't really using it most of the time. But the founders noticed one key thing. People loved the photo feature. They were taking pictures, using filters, and sharing them. Everything else, mostly ignored. So they did something a lot of us struggle with. They cut the rest. They stripped the app down to one core idea. Take a photo, add a filter, share it. That was the pivot. And Instagram took off. Takeaways for you? Pivot doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it means doing less, removing the clutter and focusing on the one thing that truly matters. In your life, what would it look like to cut the extra noise and put your energy into the one or two things that actually move you forward? Slack. Success hidden inside a failure. Slack might be one of my favorite pivot stories. The team that created Slack wasn't trying to build a communication platform at first. They were building an online video game called Glitch. They poured time, money, and energy into that game, and it flopped. The game failed. Now, here's where it gets interesting. While they were working on that game, the team built a little internal tool, a chat system, to communicate with each other and share files. They realized the game isn't working, but this chat tool is actually really useful. That tiny side tool, the tiny thing they built just to help them collaborate, became the product. They pivoted away from the failed game and turned that internal chat system into Slack. Slack went on to become one of the fastest growing workplace tools in history. The takeaway for you? Sometimes the thing that changes your life is hiding inside what you didn't work. A failed relationship that taught you what you actually need. A job you hated that showed you what kind of work you never want again. A project that didn't take off but revealed a skill or a passion you didn't know you had. Failure is often the container. The pivot is when you open it and realize there's something valuable inside. Pivot points in investing when strategies must change, so business people, they pivot too. But it's not just companies. Investors, some of the smartest financial minds in the world, also have to pivot because markets change, economies shift, and what always worked suddenly doesn't. Let's look at a few of these and connect the dots back to your own decision-making. Warren Buffett, from cigar butts to quality. Warren Buffett, one of the most famous investors of all time, started out buying what he called cigar butt companies. Picture a cigar on the ground that's almost used up. Not pretty, not desirable, but maybe it has one puff left in it. Buffett would buy extremely cheap, struggling companies, hoping to squeeze one last puff of value out of them. Then his partner, Charlie Munger, challenged him. Instead of buying ugly but cheap companies, why not buy great companies at a fair price? So Buffett pivoted his entire investment philosophy. He moved away from bottom-of-the-barrel bargains and towards high-quality businesses with some strong brands, loyal customers, and long-term potential. That pivot led to legendary investments like Coca-Cola, American Express. The takeaway for you? Cheap isn't always a good deal. In relationships, jobs, opportunities, going for whatever is easiest or least demanding can actually cost you more in the long run. Sometimes the wiser move is to invest in quality, better habits, better boundaries, better environments. BlackRock and index investing. Following how people actually behave, big investment firms used to focus heavily on traditional, actively managed funds. But over time, behavior started shifting. People wanted something different, lower fees, simpler strategies, less stock picking, and more just track the market and let it grow. That pivot, responding to how people actually wanted to invest, reshaped the entire investment landscape. The takeaway for you? When people around you change, your customers, your family, your audience, even you, your strategy has to change too. Are you still trying to win with an old playbook, even though the game has shifted? Real estate investors, from flipping to holding. There was a time when flipping houses, buying, fixing, and selling them quickly was the dominant strategy. In hot markets, it worked beautifully. But when conditions changed, interest rates rose, markets cooled, demand shifted, many flippers had a choice: keep playing the same game and get burned, or pivot. A lot of successful investors moved from flipping to long-term rentals. Instead of fast, one-time profits, they focused on cash flow, stability, long-term appreciation. The takeaway for you? When your environment changes, economically, emotionally, relationally, your strategy has to evolve. What used to make sense in your 20s may not serve you in your 40s. The way you handled stress or communication 5 years ago might not fit the life you're building now. Tech investors, from high growth to safety, in low interest rate environments, high growth tech companies can explode in value. But when interest rates rise, those same companies often get hit hardest. Investors who paid attention and pivoted some of their money into more stable assets, value stocks, dividend-paying companies, utilities, bonds, tended to weather the storm better. The takeaway for you? Every season of life requires a different playbook. There are seasons to sprint and seasons to slow down, seasons to build and seasons to protect. If you're in a high volatility season, emotionally, financially, or relationally, maybe your pivot is towards stability, boundaries, and sustainability. So let's bring this home. We just walked through companies and investors who pivoted. Netflix, from DVDs to streaming and original content. Amazon, from books to everything to cloud computing. Apple, from computers to lifestyle-defining devices. Instagram, from cluttered app to simple photo sharing. Slack, from failed video game to essential communication tool. Investors like Warren Buffett and others who adjusted when the old strategy stopped working, figured it all out. What do all of these pivots have in common? They happened when the old way stopped serving them the future, not the past, not the comfort zone, not the sunk cost of what they had already built, but the future. Companies pivot to survive. Investors pivot to adapt. People pivot to grow. So here are a few questions for you, maybe even journal prompts if that's your style. Where in your life is the data quietly telling you it's time to change? What are you holding on to just because it's familiar, not because it's healthy or effective? Is there something in your failed projects or painful experiences that might actually contain the seed of your next chapter? If you stripped away the noise, like Instagram did, what would be your core focus? And if you treated your life a bit more like Warren Buffett treats investments, where would you start investing in quality instead of what's cheap and what's easy? A pivot doesn't always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it's a quiet, deeply personal decision. I'm not doing it this way anymore. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to invest in my future self, even if it scares me. That's where transformation begins. That's where strategy becomes power. And that's where your pivot point becomes your turning point. Thank you for spending time with me on Pivot Point, Strategy for Change. If this episode sparked something for you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, don't be afraid to change direction. It might just be the step that changes everything. And always think about, what's your pivot? Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? A loss, a new path, or an awakening that forced you to rewrite your life? Pivot Point is a podcast that explores those stories. I'm Nick Michael. We'll dive into how pain can spark growth and how crisis leads to clarity. Subscribe to Pivot Point today.